Hi, and thank you for visiting my channel. For more information, kindly subscribe and follow. Now let's get started. Paul Heyman returned to WWE on the latest edition of SmackDown with a bang alongside CM Punk, who will participate in the upcoming War Games match. Today, the Wiseman reacted to the Second City Saints' new name for the OG Bloodline ahead of the premium live event. On the latest edition of Friday Night SmackDown, the two factions came face-to-face before the gimmick match ahead of the event in Canada. However, Roman Reigns' team had only members, and Solo Sikoa wanted the group to surrender and join them instead. However, Paul Heyman came to save the day and brought CM Punk back as the fifth and final member of the OG Bloodline. Today, the Second City Saint shared an edited image and called his team the Dangerous Alliance heading into WWE Survivor Series, War Games. Later, Heyman reacted to the post and shared it on his Instagram story. The group is headed to Vancouver, Canada, for War Games against Solo Sikoa's Bloodline. Paul Heyman and CM Punk reunited in 2024 on WWE SmackDown. Earlier this year, Paul Heyman was forced to work with Solo Sikoa and his Bloodline when Roman Reigns went on a hiatus. Against the Wiseman's wishes, Sikoa added new members to the faction. In the coming months, Solo Sikoa became a looming threat waiting to explode on Paul Heyman. However, the Wiseman wasn't alone. During the June 21, 2024, episode of SmackDown in Chicago, the WWE Hall of Famer reunited with his former client. The two hugged and had a heart-to-heart conversation before Solo Sikoa's Bloodline arrived on the scene. The veteran wanted CM Punk to leave and save him from the villainous faction. Unfortunately, the Second City Saint was brutally attacked by Drew McIntyre and was stretched out of the arena. Regardless, the reunion finally occurred on the latest episode of SmackDown. The Wiseman finally returned to WWE and called in his favor as CM Punk agreed to join forces with the OG Bloodline against Solo Sikoa's faction. It'll be interesting to see which team leaves with a win in Canada. The world of WWE is never short of drama, but when CM Punk, one of the most polarizing figures in professional wrestling, decided to make a bold proclamation about the future of Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, it sent ripples across the WWE universe. His announcement, just days before the high-stakes Survivor Series, War Games event, would forever change the landscape of the faction that had reigned supreme for over 3 years. For weeks, fans had been speculating about the fate of the Bloodline. With Roman Reigns' ongoing absence and the fractured relationship between JUSO and his family, it seemed as if the once unified powerhouse was ready to collapse. Then, CM Punk, whose own path with WWE had been rocky, to say the least, entered the equation. During an explosive interview on WWE Raw, Punk, who had rejoined the company just months prior, caused a stir when he called out Roman Reigns and the Bloodline, dubbing them the OG Bloodline. Punk's twist? He didn't mean it as a tribute or homage. Instead, he intended it as a mockery of their once undisputed power. They called themselves the Bloodline, huh? Punk's voice echoed through the arena, drawing the attention of fans and stars alike. I'll give them their credit, they've dominated. But let's get something straight. The only real Bloodline left is me. Roman, Jay, Jimmy, they're just side characters now. The OG Bloodline is about to show them what a real dynasty looks like. With that declaration, a new era of wrestling speculation began. Was Punk trying to reestablish his position as a leader in the company? Or was this his way of throwing down the gauntlet, challenging Reigns and the Usos at Survivor Series? Regardless, CM Punk had taken the fight straight to Roman's doorstep, and everyone knew that Paul Heyman, Roman's advocate, would not take this lightly. The conference room. The room was dimly lit, filled with echoes of the constant buzz that had surrounded Paul Heyman's career for decades. Despite the chaos of the moment, Paul sat at a large oak table, his eyes glued to a tablet screen, replaying Punk's words over and over. Punk had crossed the line, but was that line strategic? Heyman wasn't one to rush into anything without careful thought. He turned the volume back up. The only real Bloodline left is me. The words lingered in the room, like a slow burn. Heyman's lips curled into a wry smile. He leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers lightly on the table. "Oh, CM Punk," Paul muttered under his breath, shaking his head as if the weight of the statement required deeper contemplation. "So, you think you can just waltz in here and replace Roman Reigns? You think you're going to dismiss the Usos like a minor inconvenience in this war? You've got to be kidding me." He stood up, moving toward the window. The lights of the city outside seemed far more distant now, much like his thoughts. He had been Roman's advocate for years, the mastermind behind the Bloodline's meteoric rise. Roman Reigns was the head of the table, the tribal chief. The idea that CM Punk could redefine that history with one word, OG, was almost laughable. But there was something beneath the surface, something about Punk's words that gnawed at Heyman. Punk, for all his chaos and unpredictability, was brilliant. And while his egotistical declaration was designed to disrupt, it was also a direct challenge, not just to Reigns, but to everything Paul had worked for. "How did I let this happen?" Heyman muttered to himself, pacing the floor. His hand reached for the phone on the desk, dialing a familiar number. It was time to talk strategy. Time to remind everyone who the real power in the WWE Universe was. The call. "Roman," Paul's voice was calm but thick with authority. "I need you to hear me out. CM Punk is trying to rewrite history. He's trying to steal your throne, your legacy. The nerve of him to call himself the OG Bloodline. He's trying to play this game by his rules." There was a pause on the other end, but Roman's voice, like Paul's, was collected, perhaps even amused by the audacity of Punk's challenge. "I knew it was coming," Roman replied coolly. "He always has something to say, doesn't he? Punk's never been shy about inserting himself into any situation." "Exactly." Paul's voice rose in intensity. "But this is different. Punk is trying to spin a narrative, claiming that he's the true heir to the legacy. We can't allow that. We've built something, no, we've created everything for you, Roman. Your dominance, your strength, your legacy. Punk can't just waltz in and take it. We have to crush him. We have to show him that there is no replacing the Bloodline." Roman's chuckle rumbled through the phone. "Oh, I plan to. But this is more than just about me. This is about us, about the Bloodline. And I'll make sure Punk understands that at Survivor Series." Paul could sense the fire in Roman's voice. He knew his tribal chief wasn't one to back down from a challenge, especially one that threatened to redefine everything he had worked for. But there was more to this. The Usos needed to be reminded of their place, and as much as Heyman hated to admit it, the tension between them had been growing. The cracks were there, and Punk's words would only deepen the fracture. The War Games strategy. Survivor Series, War Games loomed large. The event would be historic, not just for its explosive match stipulation, but because of what was at stake for the Bloodline. Punk's challenge had shifted the narrative, but Paul Heyman, ever the tactician, saw an opportunity. This wasn't just a battle of strength, it was a battle of control. As Heyman prepared for the event, he couldn't ignore the growing tension. Punk's disruption was a direct challenge to the family's bond. But it also meant the stage was set for something legendary. "The War Games match will be the most brutal, chaotic night of your career, Roman," Paul said, his eyes flashing with intensity as he addressed the tribal chief. "And it will be a declaration. When we leave that cage, we will show the world that the Bloodline is not a legacy to be challenged. It is an empire." Roman nodded, his smirk widening. "And Punk will be the first to know that empire doesn't fall." Heyman smiled, a deep, calculating grin. He knew that War Games was about more than just winning. It was about sending a message to Punk, to the WWE Universe, and most importantly, to anyone who dared question the Bloodline's place in history. The final countdown. As Survivor Series, War Games approached, the air was thick with anticipation. Fans buzzed with excitement, wondering who would step up alongside Roman Reigns to defend the honor of the Bloodline. CM Punk's challenge had already ignited the fire, But only one question remained: would the OG bloodline reign supreme, or would Punk's audacity succeed in rewriting history? Paul Heyman was ready. With his carefully crafted strategy and Roman's unwavering confidence, the bloodline would not only survive, it would dominate. And CM Punk, for all his bravado, was about to learn the hard way that there could only be one true dynasty.